Fabrizio Romano. Manchester City charged by the Premier League for breaching numerous financial fair play rules. Now, I know you were across the story. Obviously, there's so many people who are across the story, but this is unbelievable. It looks like findings from a 4-year investigation, 100 charges over a 9-year period. I mean, what are the deep details as to what's going on here? This is crazy news.
Yes, this is crazy news. Really, I would say unexpected by Manchester City, because today when the news was released and the statement was released by the Premier League, Manchester City were really surprised. That's why it took a few hours for them to release an official statement to answer, and they confirmed they were surprised with the situation. But in the reality, as you mentioned, there is this investigation, 4-year investigation, with this big problem, big issue now for Manchester City. They will try, of course, to defend the club in the next weeks, in the next months. They are already prepared to do that. But it's also important to say that, honestly, I have no idea of what kind of consequences now there will be, because we are hearing many things, but it's still too early to say it will be a points deduction or maybe something stronger. So we have to wait a bit and see how it will develop. But the reality is that it could also have an impact on the club in general. It means for the plans of the club, it means for the strategy of the club. We know how important is the strategy for Manchester City and for City Group in general in everything they do. They love to plan for everything months ahead before, for example, the summer transfer window and many other things. So internally, they are taking care of this, but this is a very big news for Manchester City future and for City Group future, because now they have to make sure that everything will be safe and they can prepare the future as they always did. So it's not just about the points deduction or the exclusion from the league. We see many kind of stories today because, of course, it's a big investigation and a big story, but we also have to see what kind of development will be on the sportive side of this story.
Fab, one person and one manager, the only manager at City, who is always questioned about his future, always questioned about his faithfulness to the project, Pep Guardiola. How does this impact his allegiance to City Football Group, given the devastation of this news?
Yes, Pep Guardiola was always very clear on the financial fair play situation. When they asked him in the past, he's always said, I want to make sure that everything is fine. They always told me from Manchester City that everything is fine, that we are into the rules. And so he's always been together with the club. We know how special is the relationship with Chiqui Begiristain, Ferran Soriano. All the people into the board are together with Pep Guardiola. So they're still together. I'm told that today in the dressing room, Pep was very clear also with the players, saying that they have to stick together, that they have to wait and see how the story will continue till the end, because as we mentioned, till now is an investigation. There is this statement from the Premier League, but Manchester City will defend their position. So Pep Guardiola want the club and the players, of course, to be fully focused on the second part of the season, on the Champions League, of course, because this is really important to Manchester City. But at the same time, for Pep Guardiola, I'm sure it's 100% important to make sure that Manchester City are into the rules. Pep will always mention that. And so I think the end of the story will be crucial to understand also the future of Pep, also because he extended the contract a few months ago. It was November, he committed to Man City project. And so now he wants to make sure that everything is fine with the club and City Group project.
We're talking about all of this sort of through the lens of what it means for City and people connected to the club, but sort of looking at things from like a more broad perspective. So there a feeling amongst people that you've spoken with earlier today, Fab, that this might actually sort of be kind of a precursor to people understanding what financial fair play will mean moving forward, because it's something that's kind of been up in the air, both in the transfer world, but also in terms of clubs qualifying for European competition. You know, what might actually happen, what will be the defined rules. We've started to get a few inklings that there are going to be sort of, tougher measures, put into place, with regards to, how the finances of clubs are structured. Do you think this, sort of big news, something that's causing a lot of people, I guess, in the footballing world to sit up and take notice, could actually get people's attention and enable UEFA to lend a greater understanding to what financial fair play will look like moving forward?
Yes, I think this is a very good point, a very good question, because this is a crucial point. I think after this happened to Manchester City, but also what happened to Juventus in Serie A, the situation around the financial fair play is changing now. It's really changing. And also, for example, this is the reason why in the January transfer window, Italian top clubs, Juventus, Inter, Milan, have signed 0 players. It means 0 players, Inter, Milan, and Juventus in the same window. And this is showing how the financial fair play is having an impact. I'm curious to see, of course, what will be the development also for other clubs, because we know now there is a lot of discussion around Chelsea, how much they invested in January. So I think this kind of situation around Manchester City now, after a 4-year investigation, also means that all the clubs have to keep an eye on the financial situation. And for example, this is why Manchester United didn't sign any player in January on a permanent transfer, but just to loan deals with Weghorst and Sabitzer, because they wanted to make sure they had no problems with the financial fair play after what happened in the summer with them investing a lot of money. So the financial fair play rules now are really changing, are having an impact. Let's see how this Manchester City story will change, but and will end up. But also important to say that other clubs too, and you know better than me about Paris Saint-Germain, for example, have completely changed the approach. PSG did almost nothing in the January transfer window, but also in the summer they were really careful, for example, with the Skriniar situation. To bring an example, we remember that with Hakimi, another player who was playing for Inter, they asked for 80 million euros 1 year ago, and they decided to pay. This summer, so last summer, when they asked for Skriniar, PSG said 50 million euros or nothing. And I think if they wanted a player 1 year ago or 2 years ago, they were prepared to pay 60, 70, 80, no problem at all. Now it's different, 50 or nothing. So they're changing the approach, many clubs. And this is what this kind of sentence, this kind of investigations mean now.
I must admit, I'm enjoying the comments coming in right now. Rafa jumping in and saying, ha ha ha, Manchester City getting relegated again. Ali jumping in and saying, strip the titles, strip the league titles. And I mean, I guess that would be my question. It's not just to you, Fabrizio. I'd also want to hear from Michael about this one. But we'll start with you, Fab. I mean, should Manchester City face severe punishment? I know, Fabrizio, you've got to be careful how you answer this one. But I mean, realistically, as you've mentioned, and all of you have mentioned, when we see this type of noise, it does come with some consequences.
If you want my answer, I don't want to lie to our people following us. I have no idea at all. Honestly, this is really legal. So I can't predict what's going to happen. And also all the sources into the club now, they say we are not even at the stage to predict what's going to happen. So they have absolutely no idea yet. It will take time. It's not something that will be resolved in a few days or a few weeks. It will take months or maybe years to understand what's going to happen on this situation. So I don't know the verdict, but for sure it's a serious situation. It's a 4-year investigation, as we mentioned before, with many, many issues, not just one. So it's a dangerous situation, yes, but in Manchester City, they don't know what's going to be the end of the story. So at the moment, I don't want to lie to them.
Don't worry, Fabrizio. You wouldn't be the only one. It would be me who'd probably get fired from City Football Group as well if I keep talking like this. Mike, listen, let's get into it because, I mean, this is serious. We're not talking about something that's not been around for a while. City have been punished before. They've got away with it, but now it looks like they're going to get punished, and it could be severe punishment now.
Yeah, I'm intrigued once the investigation gets completed. How deep does this rabbit hole go? Because if it goes to the depths of which some rumors about Yaya Toure and Roberto Mancini, if it goes that deep, and if it goes that back to the inception of the takeover from City Football Group, oof, that's a nasty situation. Look at how many titles, look at how many players, look at how many things have happened. If these allegations are all true, then there's big question marks over what could be done and what should be done over that title situation. But until then, can't say, it's all speculation, and you have to let the process unfold.
Yeah, I mean, sort of adding to what Mike said, I mean, obviously we know that Manchester City and PSG in particular were sort of two of the clubs that fell foul of financial fair play in the first couple of years. So you can imagine that, you know, this investigation dating back that far, you know, clubs weren't as savvy about, you know, financial fair play as they got sort of in recent years. So, you know, you can imagine that there's probably some stuff that, you know, can be dug into, especially in those sort of early years, which incurred, you know, UEFA action against both City and PSG around that time. But also, I mean, I think one of the things that, you know, is maybe most troubling about what the Premier League alleged is the fact that City haven't really been cooperating with it since, I think, the end of 2018, which, you know, suggests that there perhaps might be some you know, some dodgy stuff, you know, that they don't really want, you know, coming to light. And I think that, you know, if there is that kind of material, you know, I think at the end of the day, for the good of football, you know, it has to come to surface. And if that means that City do face some sort of punishment, I'm not saying right now, you know, strip them of the titles, all of that kind of stuff. But, you know, if there is punishable, you know, offenses in City's past, and to be honest, it would be the same for PSG as well. You know, I think clubs, you know, have to be held accountable for those sorts of breaches of, you know, the financial rules.